The chip, in my opinion, is the most undervalued innovation that's ever happened at Apple.
With the device being priced at $3,500, as great as it is, I'm not certain that this is innovation for the masses, but rather more perhaps a novelty toy for the privileged.
This is Zach with the Money Channel. Apple has unveiled its foray in mixed reality with the Vision Pro at WWDC, just one day after Meta pushed its announcement for the Quest 3. Let's look at the market's reaction.
The Vision Pro, he says that it is a new kind of computer that augments using the most natural and intuitive tools. He put it into context, the evolution of all the other Apple products we've seen. He said that in the same way the Mac introduced us to personal computing and the iPhone introduced us to mobile computing, he says the Vision Pro will introduce us to spatial computing. It came along with a video, people in their living rooms with this device, and you can actually see the person's eyes through the device. There's some estimates that within a few years, the apps for this device could be up to 1/3 of the App Store, so there really is a huge opportunity here. Apple has built this huge ecosystem that developers have been building for in terms of the mobile platform for so long that that's going to carry over to this augmented reality or mixed reality device. So I'm sure the developers are very excited, thinking about what they can do.
Is this really a product aimed at developers, not the general public?
I think the vision is for it to eventually be for the general public. Now what we're seeing in these demos is iPad apps kind of surrounding you, this virtual space in front of you.
We're waiting for the why, right? Why do we need this? And I think Apple has to really articulate that. And there's been talk, do they need a killer app? Because I think maybe that's where Meta hasn't been able to break into the mainstream. We don't have a really compelling reason as to why we would wear these things. Certainly there's cases in terms of gaming, even virtual meetings, and Apple talked about that a little earlier. But I think that if this is going to be a big platform shift, like Cook was saying with the PC and the mobile phone, I think we really need that compelling reason and him to tell us why we're going to be using this.
King Lip, Baker Avenue Wealth Management. He owns both Apple and Meta.
I thought the expectations were high, for today's update. And I think that's why the stock was up so nicely over the last 2 weeks. However, I didn't see any particular surprises from the conference, which is the reason why I think after the announcement of the Vision Pro Vision Pro device, the stock is down at the moment.
So you don't see anything that happened today as a potential game changer for this company?
No, not particularly. The reason why we say that is because if you look at the Vision Pro device, from what we just learned, there's a lot of great technology that's been packed into that device. However, what's not as clear is whether this is really innovation for the masses. If I look at sort of prior product launches, the AirPods or the iWatch, those were clear innovation for the masses where earnings growth and revenue soared on those devices. But with the device being priced at $3,500, as great as it is, I'm not certain that this is innovation for the masses, but rather more perhaps a novelty toy for the privileged.
You say that Apple shares are fairly valued. I want you to tell me why you think that.
We believe the shares are fairly valued at this moment in time. The reason why we say that is we don't think there's a lot of earnings growth this year. We're actually anticipated to see a negative earnings growth this year, about 2% or so. But there's other parts of the Apple business that continue to grow, being the services business. It continues to be very attractive, where it requires a higher multiple, if you would. Relative to 5-year to 10-year historical valuations, Apple is trading pretty much in line with those historical averages. So we think the stock is neither cheap or particularly expensive at this point in time. However, looking out to, say, 2024 to 2025, that's where we think the earnings growth will resume. So this year, probably pretty modest in terms of earnings growth. 2024 to 2025, we're looking at average annualized earnings growth of about 10%, which is actually above average of where Apple was at in the last couple of years.
Announcing today, this M2 Ultra chip is going to power the next model of the Mac Pro, and they have completed their transition away from Intel to their own in-house design M chips. Also taking a little shot at Intel here, saying the performance of these new chips are about 4x what they've seen in Intel Macs. So that transition is now complete. No more Intel Macs. What are we going to hear about AI? Well, one thing they did announce is it's going to help with predictive typing. So announcing today, part of iOS 17 is going to have that predictive text is going to be improved on the keyboard due to transformer technology, very similar to what ChatGPT uses.
Apple tried to design its own chips, compete with Intel, and failed.
Yeah, intensely. It just shows not only can they make their own CPUs for this, but it also brings some optimism. We know they're working on their own modems for Qualcomm. So, when they're ready to make that transition over their own chips. And we also have reports that maybe they're trying to do their own in-house chips for things like radio frequency chips to kind of get rid of Broadcom. I know they just signed that deal, but the idea is maybe when that deal's up, they'll switch over to that. And then on the developer front, yeah, these are very powerful chips. I know people will get their hands on them and really put them through their paces, but that does help with software development. It's not just, Pixar animators and things like that. And that's going to be key for this new headset because those will also be running those M2 chips, and these new Macs can help with the development of apps for that new device.
When you look at this product cycle, and I believe with iPhone 15, it's really a mini super cycle that we go into. Because you have 250 million iPhones that have an upgrade in 4 years. This is an Apple on the offensive, not defensive. And I think when you look at AR, VR, that really is just tip of the iceberg to a broader AI strategy that goes with the developers. And in my opinion, on some of the parts, the services business alone is worth 1.3 trillion. I don't believe the stock stops here. I mean, look, a lot of times, Cook and Apple, they're playing chess, others are playing checkers. And I think what you're really trying to do here is developers into that ecosystem build more apps, more games, more in fitness, more in health. And what this is further doing is just more revenue from the consumer on the services side. That's going to be $100 billion of annual revenue as you go into the next 18 months. And I think that's a big part of the re-rating. The chip, in my opinion, is the most undervalued innovation that's ever happened at Apple. Their M2 chip is the best out there. And ultimately, they've beat Intel at their own game. You look at the speed of the technology in terms of what we see with the iPhone 15. You look at the photography. You look what I believe is going to be integrated AI that's further into the ecosystem, battery technology, and really more and more from a carrier perspective, it's incentivizing from a cost perspective, do the trade-ins. We just want you further into that ecosystem. And that's why, despite the macro, despite it coming out of their back against the wall in December, when I think you had a lot of the bears coming out of their caves, now they're in hibernation mode with the stock about to hit 3 trillion. And this is just another flex the muscles moment for Apple. Because my opinion, this is just starting the next leg from a services perspective. The initial needs are going to be so expensive. How are they ever going to sell so many of these first? This is just the first iteration. We think coming out of the gate,